just a friend.
Welcome to the Beanholes. I'm Nate.
And I'm me.
The Beanholes, it's Eric and Nate, the Beanholes. They're really pretty great, so shut up and listen to them talk. Eric and Nate.
Welcome to the Beanholes. I'm Nate.
I'm Eric.
And today we are continuing with our third week of Stanford Lee.
Stanford and Son.
So Stan Lee Martin Lieber sadly passed away last week, I believe, or as we record this last week.
Yep.
But who knows when we're going to publish. We don't tend to do that in a timely manner always. So
somebody said their favorite moment of December was hearing our Halloween history.
Oh, and that's why we pull in the big view counts.
We do. So in this week, we are discovering things in the multiverse of Stan Lee that just didn't happen. And something that we kind of teased in last week's episode was we talked about the show Who Wants to Be a Superhero. The winner of said show was to receive a Dark Horse comic and a movie on the Sci-Fi television network. The way they presented it really made it seem like that you would get an ongoing comic book.
Yeah, it
of
seemed
the,
like
of the character.
at least a year of monthly comics.
And the character who won season 1 was a guy called Feedback, whose powers derived from him playing video games. That he would play a video game and get the powers of that video game.
Really?
That was the initial idea.
Oh, I just remembered him controlling electricity.
Yeah, well, that's what Dark Horse ended up doing. They did release a comic book of Feedback, but it was not called Feedback. The comic book was called Who Wants to Be a Superhero, with a plain white background shot of the character, and it was just a one-off. It was like, all right, here's what we have to do for our contract.
Yeah, we are legally obligated to make these 10 pages, or whatever it was.
But what was not released was the Feedback movie. Now, throughout the entire run of Who Wants to Be a Superhero...
let me clarify. The same type of thing was done. Technically, they kept to the letter of the agreement. He was in a movie. But go ahead.
At least with the comic book, for as bad as the effort was given, it was still a comic book about the character Feedback, the hero. Sci-Fi did not make a movie based off of Feedback. They eventually got the character of Feedback to appear as a cameo during a carnival scene of a Sci-Fi original movie.
I think it was Sharknado.
No, it was like Lava Snake or something.
Oh,
it was one of those ones. It wasn't even a Sharknado movie. Sci-Fi heavily promoted this movie as featuring Feedback to the point that you thought
he must be the hero of the movie.
Yeah, he must save the day. When in fact his whole role was literally chaos ensuing at a carnival that he happened to be at, and him like directing traffic of like, go this way.
Well, it was the actual heroes, I think, were pursuing the monster.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. Obviously, I was mistaken about what movie he was even in, so I could very well be mistaken about this scene. But I remember him, like, he was essentially a carnival performer playing with electricity as, like, magic tricks, and then our heroes come running by, like, did you see a crazy monster? And he's like, over there.
Mega Snake. Because every year they do. The film features a special appearance by Feedback, the winning hero of the channel's first Who Wants to Be a Superhero contest. Though it was originally advertised as starring Feedback, he is a minor character that only appears for a moment towards the end of the movie.
Yeah.
So, I was really excited at the idea of, okay, this is a new hero that's going to be used in comic books, and the thought of, even as cheesy as Sci-Fi is with their movies, the thought of them making a superhero movie, it would have been pretty cool, And it's not like the guy has to be a good actor or anything. It's a Sci-Fi movie. It could have been the cheesiest.
Was it from Asylum?
Oh, I don't know. That is. Let's see if they helped produce it. I got it right here. No. Sci-Fi Pictures.
Oof.
So I don't know. Just the idea though of getting that movie was really intriguing, and just the fact that it was a throwaway scene, and it was like 2 or 3 years after too. It wasn't even anything.
I think it was a year later, but
it felt like a long time.
It did feel like a long time. I believe, for me, the completely disappointing rewards for this superhero that I did kind of like. I really liked him right from the start, and I watched, like as I said last episode, I watched the entire first season of Who Wants to Be a Superhero. It was cheesy, but
Fat
Mama, taking it for what it was. I got invested in that character. I wanted to read the comic books. I wanted to see the movie, and the comic books were there was the one, and it was hard to find, and
I got it. Because that was like the one thing I was scouring for months waiting for that to come out, and it changed its name so many times apparently in ordering. It did get like the feedback title, and then it just went Who Wants to Be a Superhero, and comic shops didn't really order a lot.
So the very disappointing feedback movie led to me not being interested at all in the second season of Who Wants to Be a Superhero. And I think he said that was the last one.
They did a season 2, but I don't think there was any promises of. I think that character may have gotten a comic book once again from Dark Horse with an actual like cover and everything. But season 2 was the last season, so there really wasn't a chance to
cover.
The one for feedback is probably the worst. Like if you give me a half hour in Photoshop, I could create a better cover than what this, and it comes from Dark Horse, who, they're not like a comic company working out of the shed of someone's backyard.
Right.
Like, they know what they're doing, and it was just a poor attempt to try to make something new. But yeah, so along with a failed feedback movie, there are a few other heroes that have had failed movies.
Yeah, well,
in the past.
Yeah, these weren't anything promised, but I did want to bring up virtually every Marvel hero at some point. There was a movie in the works, various stages of at least talking about making the movie and trying to work out some deals. Some things had been greenlit and ultimately never happened. Some things actually began production. We've talked before about the 1990 Captain America movie starring Matt Salinger.
Yep.
Who I always say his name because most people don't know him at all as an actor or as anybody at all, but he was the son of J.D. Salinger, author of Catcher in the Rye. I think it's really funny that J.D. Salinger just wanted like nothing to do with all the public attention he got from writing the great American novel, and his son's like, I think I'm going to go to Hollywood.
I'm going to be Captain America.
But we mentioned in our February episodes that Wesley Snipes was trying to play Black Panther way back in the 90s. And it was actually the vision for the movie was pretty much the same as what we actually got this year. And that's cool.
Which is really good. Like, and to think that everybody seeing Black Panther this year were blown away on just how much of the African culture was shown on screen. And even I remember internally saying at one point, like, yeah, this is Africa. Like, not that I've never seen it on film, but just never shown this much or given so much time to the culture. And to think that 20 years earlier, they were trying to bring that to the big screen as well. So it's it's not that people weren't trying. It's just that things just didn't get off the ground as much as they do now.
I should mention, I was doing a lot of research for what kinds of things to talk about for this episode, and ultimately everything I'm bringing up is straight out of an article on Screen Rant. So it's
There's the curtain pulled back.
So if I'm just like flat out reading a source to you, I like to be honest about that. You can look into it more yourself, but it's 20 iconic Marvel movies that almost happened years ago. So there was almost a Deadpool movie made in the 90s, and I shouldn't say in the 90s.
The year 2000.
Yeah, the article headline says you're in the 90s, but it was in 2000. Artisan Entertainment had purchased the rights to turn a bunch of Marvel properties into movies. Deadpool was one of them, but at that time it would have been PG rated and would not have at all been the character we know and love today. From my often worn hoodie on this lovely show. Good, I was getting cold.
I'm putting it on now. I'm interested in this.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites. And I had heard something about this way back then. Right after Howard Stern had a successful movie, Private
Parts. If you've never seen this movie, it is probably the best biopic I've ever seen. Because not only does it come right from the man himself, he stars as himself and plays himself in various stages of his life and career, and it is one of the best rags to riches stories. I mean, definitely in radio, but in terms of entertainment, for a guy to start out at the bottom when he was Howlin' Howard on the country station, all the way to the Howard Stern we know today.
So right off the success of that, he was looking to make another movie, and he wanted to make Ant-Man. So in the 90s, there could have been an Ant-Man movie. Now, no one knows for sure if he was really trying to play the title role, but I know for sure that he was trying to play the title role.
Yeah.
Why else would Howard Stern
He just
want to make an Ant-Man
successfully
movie?
starred as himself in a movie,
Yep.
and he wanted to bring more of his acting chops out.
Yep.
Man, that would have been funny.
So the movie rights in the 90s were held by Fox, and they were trying to... I'm sorry, the movie rights. The movie rights to Iron Man
Oh, okay.
were held by Fox for a while. And they were trying to get Tarantino on board. So, I mean, that's all the details I have about that, but I would have loved to see a Quentin Tarantino directed Iron Man movie in 1999.
And who knows how much conversation even happened. It could have just been a call with a voicemail that Quentin Tarantino never called back on. It's like, yeah, there were attempts to get Quentin Tarantino on board. Like, we just called his house several times and left threatening voicemails.
No, it looked like it really was making some progress, but Fox decided to really just focus on X-Men, and it's funny, if they had gotten the Iron Man movie made, we might have not really gotten the MCU the way that we have it today, but it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility if they made an Iron Man movie around the time that they had made the Fox X-Men movies, that Iron Man might have ended up in the X-Men universe.
Which is kind of how the cartoons worked, too.
Yeah.
In 1994 with Iron Man, there was like this connected universe of all of the animated shows: X-Men, Fantastic Four, Hulk, Iron Man, and then Spider-Man. Which not 100% that they appear in the same universe, but a lot of the actors kept reprising their roles as their characters.
Yeah. Now we mentioned Wesley Snipes playing Black Panther as something that could have happened. Well, while that was being talked about, the Blade movie was getting started, and with Wesley Snipes looking to play T'Challa in a Black Panther movie, LL Cool J was asked to play Blade, and he was on board. They were going to have David Fincher directing LL Cool J, but with Fincher moving on to make Seven, it delayed the project enough that as Black Panther's project fell apart, Wesley Snipes ended up.
They should bring. I think we've mentioned this before, but they should definitely bring in Wesley Snipes to play a villain in a Black Panther movie.
I think that if that would be cool. Another option is just bring Blade into the MCU.
That is an option.
So I'm trying to remember. Blade was Fox, I believe.
Yeah, that you might be right about that.
So I mean, just like anything else owned by Fox, now it's getting absorbed by Disney, and we could see, along with X-Men and Fantastic Four, we could see Blade becoming part of Phase 5 or 8 or whatever of the MCU, which will never end. Captain America, there was going to be another movie aside from the straight-to-video 1990 Matt Salinger vehicle.
Masterpiece.
Artisan Entertainment had purchased the rights to make a Captain America movie, and the production was held up by a lawsuit from Joe Simon, who co-created Captain America, and it got delayed until Artisan basically collapsed.
I think we had mentioned this. We mentioned Artisan either when we were talking about Deadpool. We definitely brought them up during the Black Panther talk. Yeah. But there was a time when Artisan was heavily desiring to just make a bunch of Marvel movies. I mean, who knows? They could have even been the start of an MCU, having them interconnected. But they just fell flat because at the time, superhero movies were definitely not the way they are today.
Yeah. So there was Sam Raimi was right after he had finished Darkman. He
great
was,
movie, by the way, starring Liam Neeson.
He got Stan Lee on board with trying to make a Sam Raimi directed Thor movie. Unfortunately, Fox, who owned the rights, they were not real interested in that. They just didn't think Thor was a hero that would actually draw people to the box office.
Yeah,
gotta say,
I don't blame
all
them,
the mistakes
though.
made by Fox and Sony in the past, not willing to bank on some of the second tier Marvel characters. I mean, even Thor in the MCU was up until Ragnarok.
It was a tough sell.
Yeah,
I mean, he was good with the Avengers, like in a group setting, but the first Thor movie is good, and the second one is like, why?
Yeah.
Why? You know.
But I know so many people that really had no interest and never even bothered seeing Thor or Thor 1 or 2.
Yeah, it was a tough sell, and it was, especially Iron Man came out as a big hit. And then Hulk is obviously a massive character, not only in terms of his character, but in popularity. And then you have Iron Man 2, and the next one coming out is Thor. Like, that could have been a massive bomb. And I'm glad people at least gave it a shot, because he's a good hero.
I saw a joke online the other day.
Yeah.
Not taking credit for it.
Beanhole's joke time?
I'm really surprised the Avengers don't advertise on the Hulk. He's essentially a giant banner. Anyway, on to the Hulk. No, actually, with the Thor thing, once Fox had some real success with X-Men, that's when Raimi got back in touch with Marvel and was like, let me make something, and we got
Spider-Man.
So, and I would say Spider-Man, especially Spider-Man 2, hugely influential in bringing superhero movies to to the public in a way that they hadn't. If you look at how the X-Men costumes were, like, they really tried to make things more grounded and realistic, and thanks to the way they did Spider-Man with under Sam Raimi, we now have a much more colorful universe in the MCU where the movies kind of straddle comics and
build off of those ideals, like with the looks of the characters instead of
straddle comics in the real world, not just try to say
Although
everybody wear black leather all the time.
my big disappointment with Sam Raimi's Spider-Man is that if you look up the makeup tests, which you can YouTube, for the Green Goblin, they actually had an actor in full prosthetic Goblin makeup, and it looked really cool. And I think even if he had a little bit more armor on him with that makeup, would have been great, because William Dafoe has so much expression on him, and I feel like under that mask you don't get that.
Yeah,
you lose out so much. So I love the movies the way they are, though. So.
Said it before, but I always want to correct you when you say William Dafoe, but it's Willem Dafoe, but his real name's William Dafoe.
Yeah, hasn't he even
you
said,
just made that up?
Didn't at some point and they asked him like, "What do you prefer?" And he was like, "I don't care." Like,
yeah,
either one.
I don't care.
Yeah.
So
my name's
you got to pass on that one. Yeah, there was almost a Hulk movie made in the 90s, but they spent $20 million on computer effects for this movie, and then we're like, you know what, it's getting pretty expensive.
Like, can we just paint Lou Ferrigno again? Like, it's a lot cheaper.
So Universal projected that it was going to end up costing about $100 million to make. So they were like, let's just cut our losses on this $20 million we've already spent and move along.
Let's just throw away $20 million.
So the X-Men movie that we eventually got was originally pitched to Lightstorm Entertainment and its founder, a fellow by the name of James Cameron.
Who?
He was very dismissive of the idea, and he was much more interested in, he apparently had the same taste as Sony, because he was like, nothing from Marvel is interesting at all other than Spider-Man, so I want to direct a Spider-Man movie. So they went ahead and started working on that instead.
And they were like, James, there are no sinking ships or blue cat people in Spider-Man. What are you doing? Stop it. Get some help.
So he was... where'd it go? There we go. He was doing a much more adult version of the film. That's how he would pitch it now.
Spider-Man discovers his webbing ability in a different way in his bedroom.
No,
adult.
But the same connection. In the comics, there always was... His development of his powers was sort of analogous to puberty.
Yep.
Including, there's quite a few panels out there where, like, Aunt May's like, "What are you doing locked in your room? Oh, what's this sticky white fluid underneath your door?"
Come on, Aunt May.
So he actually, that was a major theme in James Cameron's version of the film. There was even a scene where he was using his powers to spy on Mary Jane as she changed her clothing. And, I've heard that he just kind of spontaneously shoots his webbing at one point while watching her change. So that's kind of fun. There was almost a Wes Craven Doctor Strange movie.
Oh, man.
It was actually going to be a pilot for a television series, but the project was just dropped. I'm sorry. That was the 78 movie. I just read my notes wrong.
Hey.
The 78 movie was supposed to be a pilot for a television series, but it wasn't well received. In 92, Wes Craven was working on writing and directing a Doctor Strange movie, and they were planning to release it in 95, but it never got off the ground, and eventually...
Columbia Pictures they
bought
had the
it.
license, and then
they were like, no, let's not make it
we're
either.
not doing anything. We're going to buy something and not try to get a return on investment.
So there was some work on a Ghost Rider movie that would have starred Johnny Depp, and I mean, from what I've seen, it very smoothly transitioned to being the Nick Cage movie. It just kind of got in development hell for a while.
It's Tim Burton, and the skeleton looked a lot like Jack Skellington, the skeleton head, with it being on fire.
It was actually going to be directed by Stephen Norrington. Which,
Norrington.
Yeah. And there was going to be a Chris Columbus Fantastic Four movie. It's really interesting that nowadays people are like, why are we making all these remakes? The only reason we know about these remakes is because more of them actually happen. If you look at like when they were trying to make another Captain America movie, another Fantastic Four movie, another Spider-Man movie, like these superhero movies were constantly in development. So even when there was a horrible one that went right to video or was only made for TV or just never even got released, they were already, the scripts were changing hands and rights were changing hands and people were already starting to make new movies. And it's been that way for a long time. Here's a fun one.
Okay.
Venom, starring Dolph Lundgren.
Sign me up.
The Dolph Lundgren actually played the Punisher at one point. And that was not a great movie.
No, not at all. One of the worst ones.
But David S. Goyer wrote a script in '97. New Line Cinema was going to be producing it. Dolph Lundgren was ready to play Eddie Brock, but it just never got up off the ground before Sony purchased the rights. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, here's a hero you're not going to find on that list. A little hero. A hero that Stan Lee created for TNN with POW Entertainment in the early 2000s is a hero.
Pow!
Right in the kisser. It was a hero voiced by Pamela Anderson known as Stripperella. At the time, TNN, which ended up becoming Spike TV, started this new campaign, I think right before they became Spike TV, but it was still called TNN, where they were going to go, we are a men network, like we're men's network. We're making entertainment specifically for men. The UFC and our cartoons are going to be for men. And I remember I got excited for their animation block because they were bringing back Ren and Stimpy.
Yep.
As Ren and Stimpy's adult party cartoon because John Kay is a pervert and he was able to now do the things he's always wanted Ren and Stimpy to do, like go to nude beaches and just have naked women for the sake of having naked women. Not to add to the comedy, but just because he was a little bit of a pervert. But along this animation block was a cartoon called Stripperella, created by Stan Lee, starring Pamela Anderson as a stripper by night,
Ella by day,
superhero by later night. Is like it's like, but that's the kind of the premise of this show. Like literally is just a stripper superhero, and I remember enjoying it as a kid. Yeah, I was like 12 years old.
Yep.
But anyway, it only lasted one season, and the rumors online was that there is a actual stripper out there called Stripperella. That is her name. She is semi-famous, I guess. But according to her, that the entire show was her idea that she had mentioned to Stan Lee during a lap dance. Now, I don't think Stan was off to the side during this lap dance. I think she was giving that to him and telling him about her superhero idea. Allegedly. She ended up suing POW Entertainment and Stan on her own without a lawyer, just kind of like filing suit.
She's just like downloaded some form. So when was this? 10 years ago? 20 years ago?
No, this was back in like 2002, 2003, around when the show was on 2001, I believe.
Right.
Around that time. Apparently, it did gain traction in the mainstream media, and she was all of a sudden a bunch of lawyers started coming to her aid, and then she ended up filing another lawsuit just directed at Stan Lee. I don't know where that lawsuit went, but the whole word online is that was kind of the main reason the show did not continue on. But Stan did not stop the Stripperella brand, as in 2005 to 2007, he was with Dark Horse Comics releasing Stripperella comic books, now starring a redhead instead of trying to emulate Pamela Anderson. And there is a clip online where he is getting interviewed. I forgot what comic book news site, but he was being interviewed about Stripperella, and he was in this interview promoting that there's going to be a live-action Stripperella movie and that they're working on it. And his associate at the time then started talking that they're looking at distributors and looking at people, but that it would be written by Stan Lee, it would have an idea from Stan Lee, all the stuff would be created by him, and that when asked about if there was any talent attached to it, Stan Lee said, "We're going to have a nationwide search." Nope, we're going to have a worldwide search for someone to play Stripperella. And that's the last anything ever went of that Stripperella. And you know, it's a novel idea, I guess. Especially, it's so funny because at the time, watch the commercial when go find the TNN commercial of them talking about Stripperella.
Look it up.
They're completely open. Like, all right, it's a character by Stan Lee, but it's also gonna attract the comic nerds, and now it's gonna attract the men who don't read comics but are interested in Pamela Anderson. Like, it's blatant in their marketing that they were just trying to cover all corners with this hero. Boobies is pretty much what runs everything, including the beanholes. So thank you for joining us.
Keep on boobeaning.
But thank you for joining us this week. Next week, we're going to have our What's in the Box episode on Stan Lee, which will include
a box
and a bunch of things from Stan Lee's career. So thank you for joining us. Keep on beaning.
The Bean Holes.
Look it up.